It was supposed to be a quiet morning at the Dallas-Fort Worth International Airport. Representative Jasmine Crockett had just finished a long week of legislative sessions and was heading home. She wore a simple tracksuit, carried a small designer bag, and kept a low profile. No entourage, no press, just a woman catching a flight. But even before she reached the check-in counter, something about the airport staff's demeanor felt off. As Jasmine approached the counter, a middle-aged male staffer barely looked up. Without even asking for ID, he said flatly this lines, "Closed. You'll need to go somewhere else." But other passengers were still being helped. Confused, Jasmine politely asked for clarification, only to be met with an irritated glare. "Ma'am, do you want to fly or not?" The man snapped. That was the moment others started to notice the tension. She stepped aside quietly and pulled out her boarding pass, hoping to avoid a scene. But as she moved toward the kiosk, a female attendant intercepted her and said, "Security will need to talk to you." Crockett blinked, stunned. "Talk to me. About what?" The woman didn't answer, just signaled for backup. Within seconds, 2 TSA agents arrived and stood beside her like she was a threat. The surrounding passengers looked on, shocked. Some recognized her. "It's Jasmine Crockett," someone whispered. "She's a congresswoman." But the staff seemed oblivious, or worse, unmoved. One TSA agent asked her to step aside and began questioning her about her travel intentions. She responded calmly but firmly, "I'm a public servant, not a security threat." Then came the final blow. One staff member leaned in and said, "If you can't follow basic instructions, you don't deserve to be on this flight. Maybe try another airline." They escorted her toward the exit like she was trespassing. Phones came out. A few people recorded the scene. Jasmine kept her cool, refusing to raise her voice, even as her dignity was being chipped away. What the staff didn't realize, however, was that her husband was already en route. A retired federal judge with deep connections in both legal and law enforcement circles, he had just finished parking the car when he received her text, "They're trying to remove me." No explanation. That was all he needed to read. He made his way to the terminal with urgency in his step. Within minutes, he arrived at the gate where the incident was unfolding. Tall, distinguished, dressed in a tailored navy suit, his very presence shifted the energy. He didn't yell, he didn't posture. He simply asked, "Who is in charge here?" The same male staffer who dismissed Jasmine earlier tried to deflect, saying, "Sir, this doesn't concern you." He responded, "It concerns me when my wife, a sitting congresswoman, is treated like a criminal." The silence was immediate. Faces turned, phones filmed. Even the TSA agents hesitated. "I'll need the names of everyone involved," he said coolly, "because what you just did will be addressed at the federal level." One staff member scoffed, "You think you can intimidate us?" He replied, "No, I think the truth will." He turned to Jasmine and said, "Let's go." But before they could leave, the airport manager, now alerted by the commotion, arrived on the scene. He recognized Jasmine instantly. Panic crossed his face. "Congresswoman Crockett," he said breathlessly, "I deeply apologize. There must have been a misunderstanding." Jasmine, with elegance and restraint, said, "Misunderstanding is when someone gets your coffee order wrong. This was disrespect. This was profiling," the manager stammered, trying to offer explanations, but Jasmine's husband calmly cut in. "We'll let our lawyers sort this out. We'll be hearing from Washington." The words landed like a THUNDERCLAP. As the staff stood frozen, Jasmine turned to the crowd. "Thank you to those who spoke up, who filmed, who didn't let silence protect disrespect." Several passengers applauded. The moment had turned from humiliation to empowerment. The staff who dismissed her now looked humiliated themselves. Back in the VIP loungewear, they were promptly escorted after the manager. Tried damage-controlled Jasmine, and her husband sat quietly. "You okay?" he asked. She nodded but added, "I shouldn't have to be a congresswoman to get treated like a human being." He held her hand, his jaw tight, and they're going to learn that. Within hours, the video went viral. News outlets picked it up. Hashtags like Respect Crockett and Flying While Black began trending. What started as an isolated act of discrimination became a national discussion on airport racism, implicit bias, and the misuse of authority in public spaces. The airline and TSA quickly issued statements, but none seemed sincere. Public backlash intensified. Protests were organized at airports across the country. Former airline employees came forward, saying this wasn't the first time someone had been treated unfairly for not looking the part. By the end of the week, the staff involved were suspended pending investigation. One even publicly resigned. But for Jasmine, the goal wasn't punishment. It was change. "This isn't about me," she said at a press conference. "It's about the single mom who doesn't have a husband-in-law. It's about the kid who misses his flight and doesn't get justice." She announced a new bill, the Passenger Rights and Accountability Act, meant to provide clearer guidelines, stronger oversight, and mandatory anti-bias training at all federally regulated transportation hubs. They can be trained to check bags. They can be trained to check their prejudice, she declared. Her speech was powerful, but more than that, it was personal. She shared how moments like that chip away at a person's worth, how every dismissive tone and condescending smirk becomes a scar. "It's not just about boarding passes. It's about belonging," she said. The room was silent, listening. Meanwhile, her husband remained by her side through it all. Quiet, firm, loyal. When asked by a journalist how he kept calm, he replied, "Because her strength gives me strength. I've seen her face worse and rise higher." That quote alone went viral, dubbed relationship goals by fans and influencers alike. In the months that followed, the airport issued a formal apology, installed new diversity training programs, and even invited Crockett to speak to their staff. She accepted not for personal satisfaction, but because real change requires real conversations. "Accountability isn't revenge," she said. "It's responsibility." And so, what started as a moment of disrespect became a movement of justice. The airport staff kicked Jasmine Crockett butt when her husband arrived. They realized the depth of their mistake. It's not because of his title, but because of her truth. And the world watched as grace stood taller than ignorance ever could.